Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 22nd of April 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. Coming up in the show, PAX 2013 in Seattle sells out in under 6 hours. Nintendo claims digital sales are soaring. And WCS North America qualifier is plagued by problems, disqualifications, and accusations of map hacking. Just a few hours after going on sale, PAX 2013 is completely sold out. It will be taking place in Seattle from August the 30th through to September the 2nd. And is, of course, the main event on the PAX circuit, which consists of PAX East, PAX Prime, and PAX Australia. It would appear that the 4-day passes sold out in under half an hour, with the 1-day passes selling out pretty quickly. So this will be a 4-day event this time around, just a little bit longer. But it would appear that the venue, which is the convention center in Seattle, was not big enough to accommodate all of the demand. Well, of course, this is great news for the convention, indicating that it is highly successful and very much in demand. Unfortunately, it has also resulted in accusations of widespread scalping, as well as a particularly weak ticket claiming system, which does not in any way, shape, or form actually serve as a barrier to that kind of behavior. What makes it even more unfortunate is that the guys from Penny Arcade knew about this problem back in 2011, to the point of even creating a comic about it, and yet have, as to this point, done absolutely nothing to prevent it. Now, as far as I'm concerned, having visited PAX, it is blindingly obvious that that venue is not large enough. Actually navigating the venue with any kind of equipment whatsoever is extremely difficult, simply due to the fact that it is jam-packed everywhere. There are massive lines for food, there's nowhere to sit down, and getting through the actual expo halls basically involves fighting a crowd. Now, video game expos have this problem. Even E3 has this problem, even though it's supposed to be industry only, and that's in a gigantic venue. Gamescom has this problem, and that venue is so huge that it's about a mile long. It's insane just how big the Colin Messer actually is. And yet, you still have to fight through the expo halls. There are so many people. It's evidently clear that these video game conventions are ridiculously popular. So, there's a few solutions. One, move to a bigger venue, which of course is difficult if you've got a pre-existing arrangement and you're comfortable with the venue you're currently in. Finding a different venue can be difficult, can be expensive. And also, changing the ticket procedure. Unless you are picking up a press pass, you don't really have to worry too much about acquiring your ticket. It's very easy to get a hold of your pass, and you don't require anything like photo ID or anything along those lines. As a direct result, it is very easy to buy a large number of tickets and then sell them at a ridiculously inflated price. We had people coming up to us at the TGS podcast panel saying, we got scalped tickets just to come and see you. Now, I don't blame them for getting scalped tickets. Obviously, if they wanted to come and do the event, then what option did they have if the tickets were sold out, which they were well in advance, by the way. But it is ridiculous having to even do that in the first place. I feel sorry for the people that had to pay above market in order to pick this stuff up. And quite frankly, I would be in favor of an increase in ticket price if it would pay for a better procedure. I think this has to be the breaking point, surely. The fact that this PAX Prime sold out so quickly clearly indicates that you need a bigger venue, and you have got to change your ticket system. You must change your ticket system. You can't simply rely on the old ways. And to be fair, there are plenty of events that actually did a fantastic job of dealing with ticket scalpers simply by tying everything into photo ID and things like that. Tickets should be bought on a name basis, it should be locked down as to how many you could personally buy, and you should have to show government-issued photo ID to prove that it is actually you. Now, yes, that would take a lot longer. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of potential problems with that, but there are more potential problems, I feel, with this scalping issue. I have to wonder how many of these tickets did end up being bought by people that just intend to resell them for a profit. It's pretty damn disgusting, and something has got to be done about it. It's really sad, honestly. But hey, again, good news for PAX and good news for video game conventions in general. People want to turn up to these things. But let me put it this way. While you might find PAX and something like Gamescom very enjoyable, you probably won't enjoy the notion of standing in line for 3 hours just to play a 15-minute controlled demo of a particular game. And that's what a lot of this stuff is turning into now, simply because of the lack of space and the overabundance of people. Nintendo is really getting into digital in a big way. The company that didn't do their first piece of DLC until last year is now claiming that its digital sales are soaring, and they're rather happy with how things are going. Good old Reggie, president of Nintendo of America, said that the decision to go digital was paying off, and claims that overall about 11% of 3DS sales are currently on the Nintendo eShop, and 1/3 of US sales of Fire Emblem Awakening were also through the Nintendo eShop. Now, I can't say I'm hugely surprised by the fact that Fire Emblem sold an awful lot through the eShop. The shipments to the US were delayed, which means that that was the only way to get the game on launch, unless you happen to have imported it, so that caused a few problems, and plus it's a fairly hardcore game, so the more dedicated gamers are most likely going to indulge in digital. He also claimed that 67% of 3DS owners have connected their console to the internet at some point, with 41 million items downloaded. In general, sales of games for the 3DS are looking very healthy for Nintendo, with them announcing a 55% rise year over year in terms of sales. That is pretty good. That really, really is. If anything, I think that proves the point that we've been hammering on for so long. People don't really care necessarily about the hardware, they're concerned about the titles. They need the killer apps, they need the high-quality titles on that machine. For the longest time, the 3DS did not have them. Same problem the DS had. In fact, Nintendo seems to be consistently plagued with this notion of launching a console and then being stuck without good third-party and first-party games for frickin' ages. Seems to be the case with the 3DS, but now that is starting to clear up quite nicely, with good third-party and first-party releases coming at a reasonable rate. This is a good thing indeed, certainly something that the PlayStation Vita is severely suffering with, and is no doubt not helping its sales in any way, shape, or form. I hope Nintendo continues to push this whole eShop thing, because right now the eShop is not the complete place to buy stuff. There's actually an awful lot of 3DS third-party titles that don't appear on the eShop, and just say, hey, go buy this in a physical store. It's like, I'd prefer if I didn't have to do that, honestly. You can fit a lot of 3DS games on an SD card. That's actually one of the best things about it, because unlike the PlayStation Vita, you're not using these terrible little proprietary cards, and more to the point, 3DS games are actually smaller in file size. You can fit a metric ton of games on a 3DS SD card, and it won't cost you all that much to do it either. So, for me, I would love to just buy all of my 3DS games digitally from here on in. It's more convenient. And yet, I can't do that because half of these games aren't even on the store. So I hope that Nintendo continues to reach into the modern age, as it were, and actually get success here. It's good. We continue to move towards this digital age. I have no problem with it. Bring it on. I'm a person that doesn't really buy used games, so I'm not really all that concerned about it, although I would imagine that people who do buy a lot of used are getting just a little bit worried that used will cease to be a factor. Hell, I've been doing PC for years now. I am past caring at this stage. I can tell you how I learned to stop worrying and love the Steam. And finally, I have to talk about this, I really do. Some of you might not be aware, but I'm very heavily involved in the StarCraft 2 scene. I am a commentator, and as a result, I attend a lot of major StarCraft 2 events, and these are events where hundreds of thousands of dollars are flying around for pro gamers to win. These are people that play the game all the time. It is their job to be the best at it. They are competitive gamers with StarCraft 2. I also sponsor a team. Myself and Jen own this team. It's called Axiom Esports, and it is based in South Korea. So that's a major part of our lives. So, Blizzard, as you are probably aware, created a tournament called WCS. If you're not aware of it, I did cover this in a previous content patch. WCS was designed to unify the tournament scene and provide competition across all three major esports continents, that being South Korea, so the Asian territory, as well as Europe and North America, South America, and Canada. As a result, they created 3 regional tournaments. However, they allowed anyone to participate in any of them, but they had to pick one and stick with it. So as a direct result, what ended up happening is that a lot of players from South Korea decided it would be a better idea to play in the North American tournament, since the entire event is online except for the offline finals. So that's not too difficult to travel to if your team is willing to support you in order to do that, and they felt that it would be an easier time. Considering the prize money for North America and Europe was very similar to that of South Korea, and the South Korean tournament is undoubtedly more difficult, a lot of the players decided it would be in their best interest to compete outside of Korea, which makes perfect sense when you are a professional gamer. You are paid to win. That is the point. So it would be kind of ridiculous to say, why should these guys go and play in a different tournament if nothing is stopping them from doing so? Well, the qualifiers have happened for these particular events, and Europe had one that was reasonable. It had a lot of problems. They got the check-in times wrong quite frequently, and there were also these gigantic 1,024-player gauntlets that were designed in such a way as to absolutely exhaust people, and only the top 2 from each of those 4 qualifiers actually got into the Premier Division for WCS Europe. It was really difficult. It was a very, very hard, grueling event, and quite frankly, in my opinion, that qualifier was way, way too long. Now, North America just recently happened, and technically it hasn't finished, even though it has, because the organization responsible, that being Major League Gaming, who are considered to be the biggest independent North American esports organization, wanted to spread out the coverage a little bit more. So the games have been played, but they're trying to hide the results. Needless to say, this didn't work all that well. They decided the best format would be a 512-man open qualifier with a double elimination bracket. That means you have 2 lives. If you lose a best-of-3 series, you go down to the lower bracket. It's a harder run, but you can still qualify. There were 8 qualification spots available in total. A lot of Koreans did indeed sign up for the tournament and got involved, and by the looks of it, a lot of Koreans made their way through and succeeded. So, there has been a huge amount of controversy surrounding this tournament. I'd like to talk a little bit about my involvement in it, as well as what I know about the tournament and the various accusations that have been leveled at it. So, the first problem that people had with this tournament is that not everyone got to actually sign up for it. And by that, I mean there were a number of Australian and Chinese players who were easily good enough to qualify for this event and play and show good games. They were not able to play because all of the 512 spots were taken up very, very quickly. A lot of those spots were taken up by people that had absolutely no capability of either winning the event or even advancing past the first round. The problem is, this tournament was open, completely open. That means even if you're really low league, a bronze league player who has no chance, literally no chance. You know, this is not a first-person shooter where maybe a lucky shot gives you at least 1 point on the board. StarCraft 2 is one of those games with such a high skill ceiling that it is literally impossible for a Bronze League player to beat a Grandmaster. It cannot be done. It can't. You just cannot do it. So, those guys got into the tournament, took up a bunch of qualification spots, prevented a bunch of Chinese and Australian players from entering, and got knocked out in the first round and completely wasted everybody's time. Now, this is a failure on MLG's part because they failed to stop that from happening. A Masters League requirement would have been very, very useful. Admittedly, it would have been a bit difficult to check, but not impossible. They could have easily linked through their profile. They could have individually verified everybody. I know that would have taken a lot of time, but at the end of the day, the fact that they did not do that, or at least in some way restricted, caused them problems. It's not entirely their fault, however. Initially, they did try and reduce the number of signups by having a sign-up fee. You had to pay $18 to actually sign up for the tournament. This would put off anybody that wasn't serious. Very smart, in my opinion. But the community was up in arms over it, because unfortunately, it seems like a lot of people really don't like MLG, and they decided to call MLG greedy. Let's just bear in mind, of course, that MLG is an organization that has sunk $65 million of venture capital into its actual operation, is now finally in profit, and the $10,000 or so they would have made from these signups is completely goddamn irrelevant. It's a drop in the ocean to a company of that size. These guys have a huge office in New York. They have a lot of staff. $10K for them is pocket change. It's irrelevant. The thing is, that sign-up fee would have stopped some people from coming in, so I am not happy that that sign-up fee was not there. Some people claimed it was unfair and pro gamers couldn't afford it. I've got to say, if you can't afford $18, or at least get someone else to pay it for you, you're probably not much of a pro gamer. That's the kind of thing that you can raise. Hell, you can just ask your fans to give it to you. Hell, I was willing to sponsor a few, as was DJ Wheat, but they removed the system after a lot of complaining from the community who really shouldn't have had any say in it whatsoever, and therefore the floodgates were opened. That was one issue. Second issue. A player from Korea by the name of Hyun, who is currently in the Premier Division of WCS Korea, also participated in the qualifier for Premier Division North America, which is against the rules. You can't do that. However, this was not noticed until much later in the tournament, until people finally figured out, oh yeah, he can't do that, and eventually end up disqualifying him. Not only did this mean he was playing for hours and hours and hours, and he, I believe, genuinely thought he was actually allowed to do that because he had misinterpreted the rules, which were badly communicated by Blizzard in the first place, but he also took out several players before being removed from the tournament, which means that a bunch of people got knocked out by someone who really had no right to be there. So it sucks for Hyun, and it also sucks for the guys that got knocked out there. Another issue occurred with a player called Fruits Basket, who turned out to be a Chinese player by the name of Com, who is considered to be one of the better Chinese players. Turns out that Fruits Basket was someone that he knew. Com then took over Fruits Basket's account and played the rest of the tournament for him, or more accurately for himself. Com apparently was not able to sign up. Once again, as I said before, some Chinese players weren't able to do so because there were too many people signing up for the tournament. So Com was then disqualified after getting all the way through to a ridiculously late round. He was then DQ'd. He was one round away from qualifying, and then he was removed from the tournament. That was ridiculously late. Absurdly so. It's at that point, as far as I'm concerned, that you just say, look, okay, fine, you can stay in. It doesn't really make a huge amount of difference, because apparently Com only joined in the second round after Fruit Baskets had beaten up some random Gold League player, so it really doesn't make any difference at all. Unfortunately, this also meant that Com, who was technically not supposed to be in the tournament, if you want to look at it from the other side of things, also knocked out a bunch of other players. One of the most damning things to occur in this tournament is the fact that a player by the name of Physics Lee, an alleged map hacker, was allowed to continue to play in the tournament and knock out several favorites before being eventually disqualified. Eventually disqualified. One of the players he ended up knocking out was Katz, who is a well-known streamer in the US, a very popular guy, and also owns a team by the name of Root. This is damning for several reasons. The information about Physics Lee has actually been available for quite some time, and he was removed from his team Impulse Esports as a result of that scandal. However, his map hacking has continued, according to these allegations, and Blizzard has not done anything about it. This is a pretty damn strong indictment of Blizzard's ridiculous policies, which include the idea that we ban in waves. We don't ban when we know there's a hacker, we wait until we know about a bunch of them, and then we get rid of them all at once. Which is a terrible idea, as we saw in World of Warcraft, because it ruins people's play experience, it screws up the marketplace, and in the case of StarCraft 2, it means that people are beaten in tournaments by alleged map hackers. Now, I don't know if this guy was map hacking, but all the evidence and the allegations point towards it, so at the end of the day, if you are an alleged map hacker, you should not be in a tournament like this. Unfortunately, online tournaments are open to this kind of thing, and who knows who else was actually cheating within this actual tournament itself. Hard to know. Very difficult to know. That's the problem with online events. Now, a few other issues. The attempt to hide the results. This was not going to work under any circumstances. This information would have leaked out quite easily, and as a result of that, the tournament continues to run even though the results are now already known, which makes watching the tournament kind of pointless. Now, I do feel for MLG in this respect because it was a very large bracket to handle. They actually didn't intend to broadcast the qualifiers at all and ended up doing it at the last minute at the behest of their commentators, but unfortunately this result was fairly inevitable. You can't hide results like that, it just does not work. So it would have made more sense just to push through, or indeed just get some other commentators. Now, this is probably Blizzard's fault again. because unfortunately Blizzard decided it would be a good idea to shut down non-WCS broadcasters because they want the whole thing to be unified. Now, I understand the unification idea, but it's also goddamn stupid. I'm sorry, but if DreamHack, an incredibly successful tournament, doesn't feel the need to unify all of their streams with DreamHack branding and allow community casters to actually get involved in it, then, as far as I am concerned, Blizzard needs to get the stick out of its arse and realize that actually it's beneficial to have as many games casted as humanly possible. It's not difficult to brand a stream with WCS, just send the overlays and have done with it. That's all you really need to do, but that did not happen. So as a result, there were a ton of games that weren't casted, including very important games such as the match where a fairly unknown American player was able to defeat a legend by the name of J-Dong in a 2-0 Zerg vs. Zerg, which was absolutely crazy. And overall, the entire thing was a goddamn mess. Now, I can tell you from a perspective of someone that was obviously in contact with his players through the entire tournament, there was a huge amount of downtime, which actually caused a lot of Korean players to have to wait for a very long time because they were waiting for the stream to catch up. Because there was only one stream, I believe one of our players actually had to wait 4 hours for his next game. Now, bear in mind that the times are really awkward for those guys over in Korea, and they accept that. Because at the end of the day, they're playing in a North American tournament, they accept they have to be up late, but the delays and the amount of downtime for players was absolutely obscene. As a result, it was an extremely uncomfortable tournament to play for a lot of competitors, and an awful lot of people ended up hating it. There are also now allegations coming to the fore from another Korean player that claims that MLG actually changed the bracket, which resulted in him having to participate in a team kill, whereas previously, the day before, his bracket indicated he was against another player. Now, I believe I also saw that with Axiom as well. It seems that there was either confusion or the accusation of deliberately changing the bracket. Now, that is a pretty wild accusation that doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes more sense that you attribute this to stupidity rather than malice, but you can't screw your brackets up that way. When you've got players preparing for the next match and they suddenly find out they're against another player entirely, it's just ridiculous. It really does damage the competitive scene significantly, and it's very annoying for players. This whole thing has been a damn mess, and it seems to me like this is a result of rushing everything. Blizzard shoved this tournament out of the door at the last minute, and then immediately says, come on, we've got to get this going. And it seems like people like ESL and MLG were scrambling to get things going. The ESL qualifiers were cast by a single person in the studio with no production help, which boggles my mind. Was that because it was on short notice, or was ESL just not willing to put money in for it? MLG sounds like it was a last-minute job as well, with people coming in on the weekend unpaid to actually do this, which I definitely appreciate, but it looks like they were struggling to try and keep up with it. And it seems like Blizzard just came up with this idea, let's do this massive great tournament, and let's not provide the logistical support or the organization that these guys actually need to make it happen. The whole thing's been a mess so far, and we won't even talk about the notion that a lot of Koreans seem to be qualifying for the North American tournament. It is pretty horrible. I hope that the main event actually redeems it. The last thing we want is unsuccessful big tournaments for StarCraft 2. It directly harms the scene, and I've got to say, I was pretty damn worried about Blizzard getting involved in this. Yes, I celebrate the notion that Blizzard is putting more money into it. That's good. Saying, hey, we care about esports. The problem is, when they do this, they bungle it. The WCS Grand Finals in 2012 is a prime example of that. It was a horrible event, really badly put together. Blizzard clearly had no control over what was actually going on, and it resulted in a bad tournament. It doesn't seem like they actually have the experience to really nail this down, and I'm going to say this right now, you need to look at Riot. You need to look at what they've managed to accomplish in such a short period of time. They have stumbled hard on certain things, but overall, their LCS events are mind-bogglingly better than what we've seen from WCS so far. I have no doubt that ESL, as well as, of course, GOM.TV and MLG will actually pull out all the stops for the main events, but this has been a really bad start to this series of tournaments, and it's very disappointing. That was a long one, wasn't it? Alright, folks, there you go. Extra lengthy content patch for you. That's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching, and I think we're going to play this out on a little bit of OC Remix, as always. Our OC Remix track of the day. Some great music that you can get free from ocremix.org. This one is from an artist by the name of DigiE. This track is a pretty damn popular one to remix. In fact, there are no less than 11 remixes of this particular track over on ocremix.org. One of my favorites is Eastern Icefield by Big Giant Circles. However, I'd like to highlight this one, just something a little bit different. This one goes by the name of Breaking the Ice. I think you'll enjoy this one quite a bit. So here we go, folks. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.